Welcome to this week's Community Focus. I'm your host, Jaden Jefferson. Currently, I'm joined by Erin Kramer, who is a candidate for Toledo City Council. I guess we should first start with an introduction. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself and why you want to run for City Council.
Yeah, that's such a great question. And it's very multifaceted. So it's like, okay, where do I start? I've lived in Toledo almost my whole life, and I really love the city, and I love all that it has to offer. I sort of joke that I moved away 2 times. I moved away to go to college, and then I moved away for my ex-husband's job at one point. And when I moved back here that second time, I was a single mom with 3 little kids, and I moved back here very specifically to raise my kids here. I know what a great place this is for families, and I want it to continue to be a really great place for families. So that was about 17 years ago, and I moved back here for a lot of reasons. One of them was that my family was here and my parents could help me. I was a single mom and I needed some help. And we've come full circle now where my kids are all grown, and I've started to get a little bit more involved in community activism as well as some different political campaigns in the area. And so I'm a treasurer on a judicial campaign, and I've been volunteering for a variety of candidates. And it kind of planted that seed a little more. Somebody asked me the other day, have you always wanted to run for office? And I'm like, it was never a driving ambition for me, but public service has always been something that's really important to me, and helping people to better their lives. And I do work in college administration, so I'm the director of admissions at Owens Community College. And before that, I was a college professor. I'm all about helping people to improve their lives. And so, it's kind of just naturally led me to where I am. And helping other candidates was also really great because it really let me to do all the things about campaigning. So I learned how to, go up and knock on doors, to place super signs. And then I took some classes on how to run for office because I'm an academic and I want to learn all I can about everything. So, I did Lead Ohio. I also did something called Demand a Seat. So I went out to Las Vegas and learned how to run for office there. So I really do feel uniquely positioned to be running for office. And I'm really excited to be running with a slate of candidates. They're already doing really great work, and I'm excited to bring a fresh perspective and a new energy to council, and a working class voice, that I will look at things from a working class perspective and the different issues that are facing the city and its residents.
Your story's similar to others I've heard in terms of just the fact that some people, they've lived in Toledo and then they grew up in Toledo, but they also moved away and they came back to Toledo. It's really a familiar story, and obviously a lot of different factors play into that. Mm-hmm. And so what were some of the concerns that you kind of took with you in terms of running for this office as an at-large member of Toledo City Council?
Yeah, so I think one of the big things for me is our population here in Toledo. So obviously our population in the city has been, decreasing every time that we have a census, and it hasn't shown an increase since the 70s. And I would love to reverse that trend. And I work in recruiting for Owens Community College, and I'm pretty good at my job. Right now, we have a lot of new students starting this last week. And I would like to bring some of those skills to recruiting people to live in the city. And there's, I have tons of great ideas about what we can do to work with businesses that are, businesses here are always trying to find people to work there. They're trying to find good qualified employees. And how do we as a city work with those businesses to try to not only get those people to work for them, but to make their residence right here in Toledo. And so I think that's something that we can kind of take a multi-pronged approach to get more residents of the city, because there's so much going on in Toledo that's great. And how do we get in front of those new college graduates, those new families who are kind of looking at where do they want to place their roots? Let's get them here in Toledo.
The city's attractive, affordable cost of living, but obviously there are those other factors that people look for in a city. And so what would being on Toledo City Council help you to achieve in terms of getting it right in those other areas?
Yeah, so I think one thing that is really important is that people feel safe in their city. And that is something that is near and dear to my heart. I've been working, well, I always say working, and I'm like, it's more volunteering. I've been volunteering with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America for a long time. And as an educator, that was something that, you see the shootings, you see things happening. We just had something happen very recently in Minnesota. It happens more than it should in this country. And as an educator, I was like, what can we do? And I found Moms Demand Action, and it is not an anti-gun organization. It is a common sense organization. It is an organization that is all about safe storage. Keep your guns safe so that people don't get them who shouldn't have them. And so that is something that's really important to me. I've worked with a lot of different groups all around the city, and especially with Malcolm Cunningham at the Mayor's Office on Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. So I would like to work with him a little more and work with some other organizations that are doing things in town to help improve the safety of our city, because I think that's huge. And people want to feel like if they are moving somewhere that they are going to be safe in their neighborhoods. And I think we've done a great job of that, but I think there's still a little bit of work to do.
Anecdotal cases where things that aren't representative of the entire community. So certainly that's one of the factors that we have to consider in this conversation. Certainly another is just poverty in the city of Toledo and income inequality. And so Toledo City Council is in a position where it obviously may not have as much power over inequality and wealth as it does public safety, but what can Toledo City Council do, and what would you champion on City Council if given the opportunity?
Yeah, well, one of the things that City Council is currently doing is giving grants to first-time home buyers. And I think that is such a great program, because really that's how you build generational wealth, is through home ownership. And so I would really like to expand those grants for home ownership, because it would provide for that generational wealth that's so important. It would also help people build that equity in their home. And it would also help, our neighborhoods. When people in Toledo are buying these homes instead of outside investors, that is helpful for our neighborhoods, and it helps build that neighborhood pride. So it helps all the way around. And so we do have those grants that are available, but I would like to expand them. And I would like to expand them in lots of ways, because as I'm meeting with different people and learning about different things, we have some first-time home buyer grants for Toledo Police, for example, which I think is an excellent program to get to the police officers to live in the city. And so, can we expand that to Toledo Fire? I would love that as well. So seeing what we can do to help people that maybe don't see themselves buying a house, because I know a lot of people who are in their 20s and even in their 30s, they don't see that for themselves. And so I want to do what we can to make that an attainable dream for them.
You mentioned earlier that the city has seen this population decline over the past few years. That starts to become a challenge for the city finances, obviously, because a diminishing tax base means less money to work with. And so you mentioned one opportunity to incentivize people to move here is giving out those grants. What are some other things that can be attractive to bring people to Toledo, Ohio, because they have a lot of options out there?
They sure do. I know. I think as a city, we are pretty good at kind of telling people what we have here. But I think we need to maybe target that message a little more at young people, and a little more at people who are graduating from college, and when they're deciding, okay, where do I want to live? Because, somewhere like Chicago might seem like, oh, that'll be fun and great and really exciting. And for me, when I was graduating from high school, I was like, I want to go to California. That sounds awesome. And yes, until I got there, it was really great. I was very excited to come back to Toledo after that. So I think, the things that really matter to people, we're at one of our beautiful parks right now. Those matter to young people when it comes to where they're going to live. They have access to clean water. They have commutes that aren't hours long. That is something I, faced in California. And here, I think we sort of take it for granted. But even in Columbus right now, it takes a long time to get anywhere.
City.
Yes. And, so that is something that obviously is beneficial here in Toledo, but also our housing rates. I know that, for some people, rents are going up, mortgages are going up, but they still are nowhere near how much we would all pay for housing in even somewhere like Columbus or Cleveland, or definitely not Chicago. So Toledo has so much to offer, and I feel like we just need to cater our message to those young people that we want, to come live here in Toledo.
Housing is another big part of this because the city in recent months has announced some different housing projects in order to increase the housing stock. We're still a few units short. I don't have the exact number, but in terms of increasing housing, what are some policies that you can support on city council to help increase the housing stock? That way we can kind of accommodate a larger population.
Yeah, so I think some of the things that are going on right now are really, really exciting. I live in South Toledo, and I live not far at all from the new development in the Southland Shopping Center. I'm really excited about that. I think we have to be creative about housing here in Toledo. And I think we have to think outside the box in terms of what housing looks like. And I think that is a great example of what we can do when there's different people that are working together and trying to think outside the box. I also think that looking at the housing stock that we have in Toledo and not being so forceful on wanting to, demolish homes. What can we do to save some of these homes and, sell them to people at low prices and helping them to fix them up to then become, they can rent them or they can live in them. But we have a lot of wonderful homes that, have been neglected for one reason or another. And let's see what we can do to keep those houses there instead of knocking them down.
So what are some of the other issues that you're interested in tackling if elected to city council?
Yeah, so that's such a great question. So neighborhoods, I think neighborhoods and keeping our neighborhoods really great is really important to me. As part of my community activism work, I've been all over Toledo. And, when I talk to different people in Toledo, I feel like we all kind of stay in our own area. Like I grew up in South Toledo, then when I moved back to South Toledo. And I think a lot of people are like that. I was in Point Place last night, and Point Place people stay in Point Place for the most part. And we're kind of like that. But through, talking to different people about gun violence, it helped me to get into different neighborhoods and go to meetings all over the city. And, I saw neighborhoods that I had never seen before, and I didn't know what was happening. And then I've been going to different Block Watch meetings and hearing the concerns of the residents. And it was really eye-opening because, me being in South Toledo, and I've lived in my home for about 15 years, I don't have the same issues that other Toledoans have. And so it was really eye-opening. And so I really do think that some time and attention on some of the neighborhoods that, could really just use some beautification, some environmental design, some more green spaces, public artworks. So, some different things like that to make them more attractive to new home buyers.
In different communities in the city, we saw with these American Rescue Plan Act dollars that a lot of youth programming was able to happen in different parts of the city. Now, unfortunately, those dollars are off the books, and so it has to come out of the city's pocket. Do you think that city council is in a place to be able to take the burden of those programs and make them happen? And what would be your advice to fellow members of city council if elected?
Yeah, it is really hard. The budget is the biggest job of city council. Yeah. And so, obviously I'm not elected yet, but I did take a good look at the budget, and it's challenging. And, we need more businesses here. We need more residents here because we need more tax money coming in. So trying to figure out what is the biggest priority. And, to me, the biggest priority is keeping our city safe. So making sure our police and our fire are paid because we need to make sure we have those city services. Youth programs are also very, very important because we need to keep our youth busy, especially in the summer. Like that's very, very important. I know I have, firsthand experience with the Young Artist at Work program, and there's really great programs all around the city. I mean, working for Owens Community College, we have some great summer programs as well for younger kids, so not for college-age kids. But yeah, it is so, so important. But I also think we need to get creative in funding that, because if we don't have the money to fund those youth programs, what can we do? And I do know we have some excellent grant writers on staff in Toledo, and I think looking for grants is very important too, because there are grants out there to help us to subsidize the cost of some of those youth programs.
Grants can come and go, obviously federal government grants in particular, and so should the city be relying so much on grants?
So that's also a very good point. I feel like definitely for programs like youth programs, like we want to have those, but it's not something that is vital for our city services. We think about like sinkholes that are happening. Like we have to go fix that sinkhole. Like that has to happen. And youth services, I am not at all saying they're not important, because they are important and we need stuff for our youth to do. But I do think, when there are grant funds available for stuff like that, that's where we should jump on that. Because, when we think about, okay, we have to pay for these sinkholes, or we have to pay for these roads that are, really not in good shape, we do have some great plans to pave some roads every single year, which is so great, and it's a huge step in the right direction. But there's definitely roads that, you drive down, you're like, holy cow, this one could also use to be. So yes, I don't think a reliance on grants is a great idea. However, we need to be looking for those, and we need to be applying for those so that we can afford to pay for things that, our wants and are kind of those extra things that we want to offer our residents. But, when we are operating at a deficit, we do have to make some hard choices for sure.
Lastly, here, in terms of representation on city council, there's always this battle between obviously local business interests as well as the interests of community members. And in some cases, there's overlap. How would you balance those? Because you obviously have a strong local business sector that has certain wants and needs, but at the same time, a population that lives and works here.
Yeah, so I think it's really important to work together with the community and the business community. To have local businesses here, that's what's going to cultivate that money that's going to stay here. And so I want to really encourage local businesses to, and small businesses, under 100 employees, and I know that doesn't seem very small, but, those are considered small businesses. And what can we do to get them to locate here in Toledo? Because those monies stay here and they employ our residents here. And so what can we do to make it easier for them to locate right here in Toledo? And I think that's really important.
Toledo City Council candidate Erin Kramer, thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And that is this week's Community Focus. I'm Jaden Jefferson.